Inside the Birds is back. What's up, everybody? It is Geoff Mosher, Andrew DiCecco. Adam Kaplan's on his training camp tour, and we got a preseason game that we want to give you guys a couple of players that we're looking out for. So I said, Andrew, let's give them about 12 guys, 6 each, 3 offense, 3 defense each, that we are really honing in on for this Eagles game against the Cincinnati Bengals, the preseason opener at the Link, 7:30. So without further ado, Andrew, let's get right into it. And I want to start off offense, then we'll get to defense. So we're both going to give 3 guys each on offense. Let's start with you. Give me like one guy on offense. The first guy that comes to mind that you're really keeping an eye on against the Bengals.
NolanSmith, the Eagles' second-year wide receiver. This is a big summer for him, a big preseason for him, because last preseason did not go particularly well for him. He was able to kind of get a different perspective, take a step back because his rookie campaign started with an injury. And late last season, he had some success, mostly in the season finale. But in training camp, in one-on-ones, I've noticed him being able to separate the top of routes and kind of do some things, working with Jalen Hurts after practice. And there's a sort of a log jam there at wide receiver. And so I'm looking to see if Anias is able to get going in terms of the receiving aspect, but also the special teams part of it, because no one seems to have taken the reins in terms of the punt return job. That this is where I think he could come in and provide some game day value.
Yeah, you have to think NolanSmith will get a good amount of run early in this game. I imagine, when AJ Brown's not playing, Devontae Smith's not playing. I mean, Nick Sirianni hasn't come out and said that, but we know he doesn't typically play starters. And I'm not sure if Jahan Dotson really is or needs to play. I mean, he's the number 3 receiver, and we've seen in the past that even key role players who don't need to necessarily prove anything don't play. So I think that NolanSmith is going to get a lot of run early, probably work right there with the starters in the preseason game with McKee at quarterback, you would imagine. And I think it's fair to describe his camp so far as up and down, because it looked like it started pretty good. I know he's had a couple of drops you'd like to see cleaned up.
Yeah, he hasn't flashed a lot in team drills. I don't know if anything, he's had just a handful of catches and 11 on 11s and 7 on 7s. But in one-on-ones, I thought he's had some interesting matchups with Cooper DeJean, winning on some of those short routes where you can see a short area quickness. And I think for Anias, when you're able to make plays like that, it builds your confidence inevitably.
100%. All right, so I'm going to stay on that. The first guy I picked was in a similar mold, and that's Johnny Wilson. We both picked the 2 second-year receivers who were drafted last year. I'm picking Johnny Wilson for the same reason. I think he's going to get a lot of run. I think from what we've seen in camp, the Eagles are probably going to come out against the Bengals and mix 12 personnel and 11 personnel. They played a lot of 12 personnel in camp. So when it's 11 personnel, or when it's 12, you'll probably see NolanSmith and Johnny Wilson out there. And when it's 11, you'll see Johnny Wilson on the outside. You'll probably see NolanSmith in the slot, and then maybe another receiver on the outside. Ordinarily, we'd say Terrace Marshall, but I don't think he's going to be back for the injury. So it might be someone like Elijah Cooks. I'm not exactly sure who it's going to be, but I would think that Johnny Wilson, given that he's been running with the first team a lot with AJ Brown or Devontae Smith out, will get a lot of reps early in the game. I thought, Andrew, we both agreed early, the first few days of camp, he wasn't using his body great. He wasn't, he's not a natural separator, but he's got a nice 6'6", 6'7" frame, wasn't using it great. However, I feel like over the last few practices, Hurts has started to target him more. He started to make some catches around the seams, and that's a positive development for him.
Yeah, he's made a couple of nice catches in traffic. And then how about the block that he had to spring A.J. Dillon? It was a 7-on-7 drill on Tuesday, sprung him up the left sideline. And I think that really kind of accentuates what Johnny Wilson can bring to the offense. In theory, now it becomes, can you take a step as a wide receiver? Because as the wide receiver 4, I mean, you're just a play away from having to be able to play meaningful snaps.
Definitely. All right, sticking with offense, who's the second guy you're looking at? We probably could have guessed this weeks ago that he would be on your list. Go ahead.
Darian Kennard?
No, the other guy who I thought you were going to say first.
Will Shipley. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Will Shipley, he's going to get a lot of run in this game. And this is where you're really able to kind of get a better assessment in terms of where he is, because last year he had just 30 carries, 65 offensive snaps. But he seems to have turned a corner and really starting to hit his stride in training camp, catching the football well, doing some good things in space. He made a really nice catch a few practices ago where McKee threw the ball low. He catches it a few inches off the ground and doesn't really break stride. He's playing with a lot of confidence right now, but I want to see how he's able to sort of acquit himself, getting north and south and doing some of those things in pass protection. And I do expect him to see quite a bit of snaps.
Well, one thing that's good is that the Bengals have decided they're going to play their starters in this game. I assume that's both offense and defense, not just on one side of the ball. They've said they want to start faster. This will be Al Golden's first actual game as defensive coordinator. He's the new Bengals defensive coordinator, the former Notre Dame defensive coordinator, right? Notre Dame? Yeah, that's where he was. So he did a great job at Notre Dame. And so if you're trying to test and get an evaluation of guys, you'll throw some blitzes in. So I think that'll be good for Will Shipley, I would imagine, in some pass pro scenarios that we'll get to see how he holds up in that department.
Yep.
On the same vein, in pass pro and in other areas, my second guy is Drew Kendall. Andrew, as we've prognosticated, going into camp, he was pretty likely he was going to work his way up to second team center fairly quickly. He has done that. He is the only player outside of Cam Jurgens on the roster who is a natural center and has been snapping at center since his Boston College days. He's the son of an offensive lineman. I think he's done well. I noted in a recent pod, he did a really nice job in one-on-one drills. I forget who it was against. Now it wasn't. It was either Gabe Hall or
no, I think he told me it was Gabe Hall. I think he told me it was Gabe Hall.
Yeah, I think it was. And I just liked his combination of his footwork and his punch, and he had a plan. So I'm really, Tanner McKee's going to be out there, and the Bengals are playing their starting defense. So he should get a good opportunity. It's hard sometimes to look at center, but I also want to see his athleticism because, we've gone from Jason Kelce to Cam Jurgens, and I don't think Kendall is quite that. I know he's not quite that guy as an athlete. So I want to see how they use him. Can they run some of their kickouts like they do with Cam that they used to do with Jason Kelce?
Yeah. Drew Kendall is a guy that I've written about on InsideTheBirds.com, and he's starting to come on a little bit after sort of trying to find his way earlier in camp. This is his first live action, so I'm curious to see how he performs.
Definitely. All right, let's round out our offensive players to watch. You've got an offensive lineman not named Drew Kendall that you're going to be keeping your eye on. And something tells me, Andrew, based on some past precedent, that you might be able to see a lot of this guy against the Bengals.
Preseason Iron Man, that's Darian Kennard. So Darian Kennard is obviously ping-pong between right guard and right tackle, so he's showcasing some versatility. He was on the team last year, made it out of camp in a bit of a surprise. I think I had him on my 53. And a year of working with Jeff Stoutland, it seems like he's really making notable strides in his game. He's going to play a ton. We've known that. But it's the versatility, Jeff, that I think gives some stability to a lot of youth there in terms of the Eagles have a lot of depth on their offensive line. So I think he kind of gives them a little bit of experience and can give some value in terms of game day, and game day deployment.
Yeah, so you imagine he'll be starting right tackle. That's basically where he's been with the Eagles. But you never know. Sometimes we see guys.
And Matt Pryor was limited
right
the last day on day 10, and the Eagles do like Darian Kennard.
All right, so Darian Kennard. We'll round it out for you. Next one for me is a guy that I think we'll start talking about a little bit more. You already have written a little bit about him. We've talked about him a little bit. But usually after the first preseason game, you start to see some movement at practice with the depth chart. And this guy's made some plays. It's Darius Cooper, wide receiver. Yeah, I kind of wrestled between him and Elijah Cooks, but I feel like we've given Elijah Cooks a lot of discussion, and certainly he's deserving of it, and he'll get some early run too. But Cooper is a guy, a rookie free agent, Andrew, who he gets a lot of targets with the second and third teams, and he's made some plays. And seems like he either catches a touchdown or helps move the ball in a move the ball drill with the second team nearly every practice.
And he's really seemed to develop a rapport with Tanner McKee. And that's something that I think should lend itself to a little bit more cohesion in terms of the offense. When in preseason, let's face it, it's generally sloppy. But Tanner McKee and Kyle McCord and Dorian Thompson-Robinson, the quarterbacks, they have shown that they can be capable and navigate the offense. So I think it's going to give guys, to your point, Geoff, like Darius Cooper, more opportunities to make the most of their targets.
What have you seen from him, if anything, from a special teams standpoint, Andrew?
Not a ton, not a ton. I'm curious to see if they get him involved in the punt return game, or maybe as a gunner, or running down the field on kickoffs. Because you're right, Geoff, and I'm glad you mentioned it, because he has had some nice moments, and the moment has not been too big for him. Aside from a fumble, but there was a time where Tristan McCullum punched it out of his hands. He's really been consistent and seems to be able to gel with whatever quarterback he's working with. And he's made plays in short to intermediate levels to even deep passes as well.
Right. I did make a note of this. I forgot to say it on the pod, and I'm not sure if you saw it too. The last practice they had, which was on Tuesday, they did a ton of red zone. You saw that. Ton of team drill, ton of 7-7. He took a first team rep. It was only one that I saw, but I wrote it down because I absolutely saw it. He was in the slot. And he may have taken a few more that I didn't see, but I know that he at least got one rep with the first team, which is a lot for a rookie free agent.
Yeah, it is. I think that he's really come on, and it's been quiet. He's been overshadowed a little bit by Elijah Cooks, but I'm glad you gave him a mention here.
Yeah, definitely wanted to shout him out. He's done a nice job. Looks pretty shorthanded. All right, so those are our 6 offensive guys. For you, it's Ainias Smith, Will Shipley, and Darian Kinnard. For me, Johnny Wilson, Drew Kendall, and Darius Cooper. Maybe after we're done, I feel like we should throw a few honorable mentions in there too. Some other guys. Yeah, we'll get to that in a second. I want to transition to our 6 guys on defense. First, you got to hear a word from our great friends at Sky Motor Cars.
Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people all over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schiller, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
And if you stop into Sky Motor Cars out there in Westchester, PA, make sure you tell them Adam, Jeff, or even Andrew sent you. You will get a great deal, the best car shopping experience. I'm telling you guys, you got to trust me. If you had to buy a car in the last year and a half, you realize it is an absolute circus. Nobody has inventory. You have to custom order it. You can't even get everything that you want because it's not available. Sky Motor Cars makes it so easy. Great inventory, great customer service. People want to help you. So please make sure you stop in or visit them at skymotorcars.com. All right, let's get to our defensive players that we're watching against the Bengals in this preseason opener. We were very similar, so I made sure we had 3 different guys. But Andrew, go with your first guy on defense you're watching.
So I had two under the radar type of guys, and then one that's sort of fastly becoming a household name. The first guy is Gabe Hall, the Eagles' second-year defensive tackle out of Baylor. Look, you don't make a move in sending Thomas Booker to the Raiders and sacrificing some of the depth, because Thomas Booker likely would have made this team if you don't feel comfortable in one, Ty Robinson, the Eagles' 4th-round pick, but also someone like Gabe Hall. Let's also not forget, I have to mention that Byron Young, another young defensive tackle, he was missed practice and has missed the last 2 with the groin injury. So they still made that move, which suggests that they're happy with what they've seen from Gabe Hall. I've seen him win on one-on-ones. I've seen him get into the backfield, get to quarterbacks on a fairly regular basis. And at 6'6", 295, he can play every position on the defensive line. He mentioned to me last season on the Inside the Locker Room podcast about how going against Landon Dickerson, and he did admit, yes, the battles were largely one-sided in favor of Dickerson, how much they helped get him better. And I'm seeing a noticeable difference in his consistency, because last summer he didn't really make much of a dent at all in terms of the rotation or really flashing in any way. But this summer has been drastically different.
Yeah, I would agree with you. This is a player coming out of Baylor, Andrew, who we've talked about. He should have been drafted on talent and athleticism alone. He was viewed as a player who just needed a little bit more coaching, harder coaching, the proverbial kick in the rear end. And, who knows if he got it or not, or if he just, spent the year with Clint hurt and just the light came on, but it certainly seems like this camp he is playing like the player that he was at Baylor, and he was a good player at Baylor. And he could be a really nice story, Andrew, if he can play consistently. It'll be hard because obviously the Eagles have 3 guys, well, 4 really if you count Robinson, who's a 4th-round pick, already ahead of him on the depth chart. But if the 53 were made today, he's probably on it because he's at least the 5th defensive tackle. And I feel like right now he can only play himself out of that spot by not having a good preseason or rest of camp. But it looks pretty good for him, at least for the moment, and that's great. There was one more thing I wanted to mention about Gabe. Oh, yeah. So my colleague, Jimmy Kemsky at Philly Voice, he does this media poll that you and I took. He does this every year, right, where he goes around and asks about 30 people in the media whose stock is up and whose stock is down. One player each, right? So Gabe Hall wound up coming in tied for second in his poll for stock up.
I took him. Yeah, I took him.
Nice. Now Moro Ajomo sort of ran away with it.
But I don't know if he could be a stock up if he went into training camp with considerable buzz. You know what I mean?
You talk about Moro?
Yeah, Moro.
I agree with you. I felt the same way too. And even Jimmy wrote that he didn't even realize that last year Moro was sort of the leader in the clubhouse for stock up as well. But it just speaks to people noticing Gabe Hall really standing out there, that he was tied for second with some other good players there. So Gabe Hall, definitely someone we're watching against the Bengals. For me, this is a little bit obvious, but I think it makes it no less important. And that would be Keely Ringo, cornerback. And part of it is that because the Bengals are going to play their starters, I'm assuming Joe Burrow is going to be out there, T. Higgins will be out there, Jamar Chase will be out there. Who knows? I mean, that's what Zach Taylor is saying. I've seen coaches say that and then literally play them a few snaps and get them out of there. Sort of they say it just to make sure the players are in that mindset, but they don't really play them. But either way, Keely Ringo's got a lot to prove. Year 3, we've talked about it a lot. I just hope that the Bengals really do play their starters for a series or two so that we can see Keely Ringo matched up against some pretty good talent.
Yeah, absolutely. That is an obvious one, but one that certainly bears watching. This is a critical 3-game stretch for Keely.
100%. All right. So that's our first guys on defense. Who's your next guy on defense that you'll be watching?
Second-year safety Andre Sam. Now, to my eye, Jeff, he's taken the most of the second-team reps of that sort of, well, I guess compared to Tristan McCullum. I've noticed Andre there almost every time they're out there. And Vic Fangio, he mentioned some of those backup safeties, and he said Andre's been playing well. And when you compare that to someone like a Tristan McCullum, who he mentioned obviously in the spring as throwing his hat in the ring as being in contention for the starting spot, he didn't mention Andre Sam, but I think Andre Sam's actually had a better camp, at least in my estimation. So you have that year on the practice squad. C.J. Gardner-Johnson was sort of a big brother to him, so presumably he showed him the way, and he was able to kind of be in the meeting rooms with Joe Casper and everything. I think you're going to see a much faster and more confident player in those games. He's probably going to rack up a lot of tackles.
I'm thinking he's going to play pretty early because obviously Reed Blankenship won't play as a starter. It'll be interesting to see if Makuba gets out there. He made it out there for practice on Tuesday in a limited form. But he did participate in some 7-on-7 teams. I thought at one point he might have, hurt his arm or re-injured it, but he looked okay. I mean, he needs reps. So if he can play, he'll be out there, but they also may not feel like he's 100%. So I don't know. Sidney Brown will definitely play. McCullum will definitely play, and Sam will definitely play. So once you get past,
probably Seen and Max and Hook as well.
Oh, well, Seen definitely. Seen, yeah. I'm just trying to say who's going to play early.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So without Blankenship, you would think the 2 guys who would play would be Makuba and Brown. But if Makuba doesn't play, then it would be Brown and McCullum with Sam coming in, I would think, in other packages or even splitting some time there. So I don't think you're going to have to wait real long to see Andre Sam get onto the field, even if Makuba and Brown do play.
Yeah, and by the way, Tristan McCullum has had some moments as well in training camp, and the Eagles like him clearly. Just to my eye, it seemed like Andre was getting slightly more reps with the 2s and has been around the football an awful lot.
Yeah. And again, if going back to if the Bengals wind up playing their starters for a couple of series, it would be nice test for the defensive backfield of the Eagles, and Sam would be a part of that. All right. So my second guy has been invisible in camp, and that's why I'm putting him squarely on this list. I think if he was having a really good camp, he might not. He's the type of player who might not play, like, because key reserves don't play. But Azeez Ojulari has done really nothing. And I try to take this a little bit with a grain of salt. We don't get to watch all 22. We don't get to go back. Sometimes guys are playing better than you think. Even Vic Fangio mentioned that, we don't always see all the plays, right? Because they happen so fast and we don't get to see the replay. But honestly, with edge rushers, I feel like you notice when they're invisible and you notice when they're not. Mm-hmm. And Ojulari so far has been squarely behind Josh Uche as far as these guys who've come in, the newcomers, and just flashing and making their presence known. So you would like to see him get out there and remind you that he's been a pretty good pass rusher throughout his career.
Yeah, I mean, on the surface, the Eagles are really light there at edge rusher, behind NolanSmith and Jalen Carter. Josh Uche's had some moments. I think he's clearly had the better summer compared to Azeez Ojulari, but that's only 3 players that they can count on. This is a big little 3-game stretch for Ojulari, and he's going to have to really show up, or the Eagles are going to have to make a decision.
Yeah, definitely. All right, your last guy on the defense that you're looking at.
Eagles 5th round linebacker Smile Mondin Jr. He's been one of my favorite players to watch in training camp. Rangy, sideline to sideline, and really, really intelligent, as you might expect from a Georgia linebacker. It's very hard to, you got to remind yourself that he was a 5th round pick. And I think I even went on the record, Geoff, of saying that I thought he was one of the best day 3 values, period, because of watching him play for the last 3 years. And I mean, just watching him plaster Saquon Barkley on a scramble drill in the end zone or run fits. He's just active. He's instinctive, and he attacks downhill. He's fearless at 6'2", 224 pounds. Wouldn't surprise me if he gets double-digit tackles in this game.
Yeah, he's been really impressive, Andrew, and he's probably going to be out there early. It'll be interesting to see. Jahad Campbell is a guy who needs reps. I think Vic Fangio would like him to get the reps. But in his press conference, I think on Monday or Tuesday, Jahad Campbell, I think it was the second time he spoke, and he kept mentioning getting his shoulder right. He was off the limited list for the first time on Tuesday. So he was a full participant even though we know he's been doing pretty much everything, but it was really Tuesday that he was finally considered full go, but he still said getting the shoulder right. And I do wonder if the team will just hold off one more week on him before getting him into a preseason game. And if that's the case, without Nakobe Dean, with Bourne still having, well, Bourne wouldn't play anyway, but he's got the back contusion. And if Campbell doesn't play, you got to think that Trotter Jr. and Smile Mondin would get a ton of the first half action, right? And a lot of reps. Yeah.
Absolutely. You mentioned Campbell, maybe the Eagles holding off 1 week. Makuba maybe as well. We'll have to wait and see. But Tuesday was his first 11-on-11 period since day 3. Day 3 was the day where he hurt himself. So with the shoulder, sometimes you might want to be a little bit more gradual, but both players do need reps. So it's kind of hard to strike that balance.
Yeah, it's a catch-22. My last guy, we talked about him a little bit, but I've really got Sidney Brown on my radar in this first game. Not necessarily for his, you want to see him play well. You want to see him tackle well. But I really want to watch him within the framework of the defense, Andrew. And, Vic doesn't do much exotic stuff anyway, so he doesn't have to worry about hiding things in the preseason other than a few creeper and sim blitzes. But I want to see, do they use him in a post safety, as a box safety? They're going to start off too high, but I think Vic needs to see him in both situations. We know he can come up after the snap and sort of lay a hit over the middle, but I would actually like to see him get a little bit of man coverage just to see if he's improved in that area. I'd like to see him as a post safety to see his range sideline to sideline, especially if you got the Bengals top receivers in there, Higgins and Jamar Chase. Even if not, who's the rookie they had last year who was pretty good? I want to say, is it Burton? He was a guy that they tried to get down the field.
Deontay Burton or something like that. Yeah,
like Jamar Burton or something like that. But he was a Baker Burton. I don't know. I'm sorry, folks. My brain is failing me. Andre Yoshevich is a pretty good. He'll probably get some time. So I want to see how he's deployed, and I want to see that he's comfortable and instinctive, and that he's not swimming in the playbook. He shouldn't be swimming in the playbook at this point of his career.
Yeah, no, that's a great one. He's gotten a ton of first-team reps this camp with Makuba missing a sizable chunk. So we'll see if that translates on the field. This is a big summer for Sidney Brown.
Yeah, Jermaine Burton was the name I was
Jermaine,
trying to think
of course.
Yeah, Jermaine Burton.
I love this tape coming out. Yeah.
Yeah, it seemed last year. Well, listen, it's really tough to get on the field when you've got T. Higgins and Chase and Yoshevich playing well, but they did put him on as an outside sort of backup X, and they did try to throw the ball deep to him at times. In fact, I think Burrow went deep to him on 4th down. Remember there were 2 4th down conversions he didn't get? Yeah. It was either 4th down or 3rd and short, and they went deep to him. And I'm like, why are you throwing the ball deep to a rookie when you got like a short yardage situation? But that's what they did. So those are our 12 guys. I'm going to reiterate them. The guys you're watching on offense are Anais Smith, Will Shipley, and Darian Kennard. On defense, Gabe Hall, Andre Sam, and Smile Mondon Jr. For me, Johnny Wilson on offense, Drew Kendall, the center, Darius Cooper, rookie free agent wide receiver. And on defense, Keely Ringo, Azeez Ojulari, and Sidney Brown. So real quick, just off the top of your head, a couple other guys that are going to be on your more second half guys.
Sure.
Yeah, it's guys who the people may not be knowing much about.
Yeah, I'll give you 2. I was going to say rookie Mac McWilliams, but he may play a little earlier. I'll give Lance Dixon, the linebacker out of Toledo, number 41 on defense. I've noticed him when he's attacking downhill as a blitzer, but I've also seen him fare pretty well in coverage, and he's a rangy guy. He's bounced around to a couple different colleges. I think he has some ability, and he's played on all 3 units at one point in training camp. And we'll see. This is big for his development. And when you're not going to see a lot of you might not see Campbell, you're definitely not going to see Bond. That opens the door for Dixon to get some valuable reps. Yeah, and then the other player would be running back Shanderick Powell. And at 5'7", 183 pounds, he definitely has some juice. He can catch the football. Really productive college career at Central Arkansas. The opportunities haven't been as much as you might expect in training camp. The snaps are pretty infrequent when you're that far down in the pecking order, but I think he's made some nice plays on stretched runs and catching the football. There's another play the other day where he caught a pass in the flat. Dallas Gant, the linebacker's trying to hold on to his jersey. He shakes it off and he picks up some more yards. So he's a scrappy type of player.
I like it. From my end, a tight end not named Dallas Goedert or Grant Calcaterra absolutely needs to start making a play. Bryant's been invisible in camp. Granson, not invisible. He gets targeted every once in a while. This is the type of scenario where I'd like to see him at least stretch the field a little bit. I've actually been I don't know if you've felt this way, but I've kind of been a little bit impressed by Nick Muse. So we'll see if that's
not so much. Not so much.
No. Okay.
Nah.
All right.
Yeah, more in minicamp. mandatory mini camp. He had like 3 highlight reel catches, and he hasn't really stood out to me too much. None of the bunch, to be fair.
Yeah.
Really.
Yes. And that's why I made that point. Like some tight end not named, Calcaterra or Goddard, it would be helpful to have a nice game. And then the last guy, the rookie tackle Miles Hinton, looks like he's been getting better in camp. So we'll see. He'll probably get a decent amount of run in the first and probably second, third quarter, and fourth. So just want to see how he holds up in pass pro.
Yeah, that's another good pick.
Yeah. So that's about it. We'll probably do this again for the second and third preseason games, but that's a good variety and menu of Eagles that you should all be watching. Some of these guys are really pushing for spots. Others are just trying to make their name known. And we know, Andrew, that we see some depth chart movement after that first game, then the day off Friday. I think Saturday they resume practice. Yeah. That's usually the time in camp where all of a sudden, if you see a guy, you might see some guy move up or move down because there have been a couple of weeks of evaluation and a full game now.
Yeah, that's what makes – I like preseason football, Jeff, because you got to remember throughout the draft process, I evaluate a lot of these players, and then you get to see them each and every day in training camp. So you want to see if what you've seen on the practice field matches what you see on the game field and game situation. So the preseason's for guys much like the ones we mentioned today.
Yeah, listen, I surprised myself. I watched the Hall of Fame game deep into the third quarter.
Wow.
So I was like, oh, there's Kamani Vidal. I kind of liked him coming out. I thought he was going to add a little change up to that Chargers backfield. You start like talking about names of guys who were drafted on day 2 or day 3. It's kind of funny, but yeah, that's absolutely what the preseason's all about. And that's going to do it for this edition of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles Intel. As always, we thank you for flying with us inside the bird.